Welcome to Ashonda at Large, where we discuss faith, family, and the future of our community. I want to welcome you once again as we get ready to dive into a little something that's controversial, but I think it's very important that we address this issue right here. As many of y'all know, Gillette has put out their toxic masculinity commercial or ad, and I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I don't like it. And I know, it might be hard when I say that because you're like, what, you're a woman? Like, did you see the ad? Yes, I saw the ad. Was it well put together? Absolutely. It was very emotional. It was very, all the right clips to make you feel like, standing up for manhood is, in a positive light is what they're standing for. But y'all, when we're dealing with the media, we have got to learn to read between the lines. And, I think, what's unfortunate is that a lot of people, are just looking at things on the surface level, but they're not really thinking about the deeper underlying messages that are being spoken to us through ads, through the media. Now, first off, let's talk about these words, toxic masculinity. So toxic masculinity is presented in this ad, of course, as men being rude, being sexually overt, being boys will be boys, as we heard the theme when they're fighting. And so it paints this picture of men at their worst, which of course, men are doing sinful things because they're sinful beings, they're sinful humans. But the reality is that women also do sinful things. And all of those instances that were shown as toxic masculinity, they can equally be shown in women today. We've had so many examples of women acting unladylike, acting without character, acting without meekness, without having a mild spirit. Y'all, we have been affected by the feminist movement to the point where it's just mind-blowing. I mean, even as we speak, that people are preparing what's called the Women's March. And the Women's March, and I attended this back a few years ago. I didn't actually attend the march, but I was there on a separate business and got caught up in the melee of the march. And when I tell y'all that there were so many women out there, it was a sea of women fighting for the right to literally kill their babies. Okay, I'm just going to put it, let's just, it wasn't, they say, oh, it was about Donald Trump. And y'all know I'm not a Donald Trump fan. And Donald Trump does toxic masculinity, if you want to quote unquote, all the time. He ran off of his platform continually making snide and crude remarks toward women. So I'm not really, addressing Donald Trump as though he's sort of like out of this whole toxic masculinity thing. But there were thousands, there was a sea of women that were doing and saying the most irreparable, disgusting and grotesque things, and all for the purpose of killing their children and having the right to do so. Now, y'all got to understand that the Women's March, that is fairly new, is on the heels of what is called the March for Life. Now, the March for Life is also an annual march that's taken place for so many years. I mean, you're talking about 3 or 4 decades now since Roe versus Wade, where you have another set of women and men and children that come out and stand for the right for the unborn. And that takes place right around January 22nd. For the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. So it's like the Women's March is a clapback to the March for Life. So again, you want to talk about toxic masculinity. You have women that are fighting one another. You have women that are molesting and raping young boys in schools. You have women that are constantly doing and saying things that are just totally disrespectful and lying on men and saying that they have been raped or saying that they have been mistreated by a man, only because they know that he's going to get in trouble, because it is like the natural inclination to believe that a woman is going to tell the truth. And so many times this happens to Hebrew men. This happens in our community, where a woman, particularly of the Caucasian persuasion, will say that a Hebrew brother has done something to her when evidence proves otherwise. But unfortunately, that man's name is smeared. A lot of times they lose their jobs. A lot of times, they get records, they get a bad reputation. It ruins them off of a lie. So this notion of toxic masculinity as being this thing that we're fighting, then you need to fight against toxic femininity, not femininity, but toxic feminism, that toxicity that causes women to have a disdain for our design, our natural design to bring forth life. So I feel like in that notion that is extremely unbalanced. Further on this issue in terms of toxic masculinity, we're going to deal with the company itself, Gillette. Gillette is actually under the umbrella of Procter & Gamble. Now, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with the Negro Project that was instituted by Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, got together with Mr. Gamble, who was a part of the formation of Procter & Gamble, to form what was the Negro Project, which was to have Black ministers to essentially be quiet about abortion and birth control that was happening in the Black church. So the whole idea was to really stop the focus. So because many of our Black leaders, even Jesse Jackson, were against abortion. But what ended up happening was that this Negro Project was used to kind of put the lid on the discussion concerning birth control and abortion, and only to have it presented as proper family planning. Unfortunately, even one of our greatest leaders that's presented to us, MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., was also brought into this deception. So this Negro Project, where Margaret Sanger says that she didn't want the word to get out, that they wanted to exterminate the Negro population, and people have said, oh, that's not the context in which she meant it. Well, I always follow fruit. I'm not so much interested in what you have to say if the fruit that you have produced is saying the opposite. So if you say that's not the way I meant it, but when I see that abortion clinics are centralized within the underserved communities that are widely considered Black communities or ghettos, when I see that, I see the fruit is that you exactly did not want the word to get out, that you want to exterminate the Black population. So Gillette, back to them, they are underneath the corporation of Procter & Gamble. So when you're supporting their products, you're actually financially supporting an organization that goes back and gives dollars into the organization that is designed to kill our children and our heritage. So again, we got to learn to read between the lines. Now, the presentation of what good fatherhood was, okay, that's great. Fathers are powerful. Fathers are mighty. But even with that, y'all got to consider this. Their goal is not to show positive male traits. No, their goal is not that at all. You see, the goal of the elite is to feminize the nation. It's to make men effeminate. You see, because if men are effeminate and they're docile and they're more sensitive and emotional like women, then who protects the country? Who protects the country from outsiders, from invaders? The goal is to emasculate men. Of course, men have positive traits. Of course, men are excellent fathers who want to be excellent fathers. Men are responsible for governing themselves. Fathers are supposed to raise their sons and their daughters. We understand this. But to present it as though men are supposed to be doing these acts, and at the same time, their natural defenses, their natural ability to be more to be more situated towards protection, warlike, if you will, like boys wrestling. Boys will be boys because guess what? They're meant to be boys. It's built into their DNA to go and to grapple and to wrestle. And again, y'all, I'm a mom of 4 boys and 4 girls. And like I was reading this lady's article a few years back, and she was talking about how when she had first became a mom, because she was a feminist, she said, you know what, I'm not going to allow my son to have guns and, toy guns and things like that, because I don't want him to think that masculinity is about aggression. Well, after a while, she started seeing her son, take a banana and start playing with it like it was a gun. Now, she said, don't get it twisted. Don't think that I had him exposed to violent movies or television shows. Quite the opposite. I actually tried to encourage him to play with more neutral toys. But the reality is his DNA that was built in him was to express himself in a more aggressive way than when she had her daughter. Her daughter was more, leaning towards creativity and arts. And, of course, we got a lot of great brothers out here that are into the arts, but their DNA is built to be more rooted in action and activity because of the fact that they're growing up to be protectors and providers over the women and the children. See, that's God's right order. That is how he designed it. He designed for the men to be able to think logically, to think in a different way, not emotionally looking at every situation from an emotional standpoint. And unfortunately, in society, the goal of Satan is to turn that which is right into wrong and that which is wrong into right. He literally wants to muddy the waters and switch the roles. He wants the women to be more masculine and the men to be more feminine. And you see this with the whole transgender movement, where you have grown men that are putting on dresses and even doing hormones, but then they want to compete in women's sports and competition against women's, whether it's wrestling or whether it's track and field. They want to dominate women's sports. And the sad thing about that is that we don't understand that regardless of whether or not you've taken some type of chemicals to change your bodily DNA, your hormones, you still have the masculine traits, the strength, and all of those things that come with being a man over a woman. So why are we not complaining about these transgender men who are entering into these sports and they're coming against real God-designed women and they're putting their hands on these women? Why are we not complaining about that? That is abuse. That is really abuse, but we think that that's acceptable because they identify as a woman when they're really biologically a man. Y'all see, this is one of the reasons why the My Ovaries Matter mission is what it is, because ovaries are a part of a woman's biology. It's a part of our ability, our reproductive organs to bring forth life into the world. And I know sometimes people get funny about that word, but you got to understand it is our very design that is being attacked. Our design to bring life into the world. The man's designed to be the protector, the provider of his home, of his community, of his nation. That is what is under attack. So we look at this commercial and we get all emotional and say, oh yes, we got to end this toxic masculinity, while ignoring the toxic femininity, the manipulation, the witchcraft, the lying, and even the killing, and even the sexual assault that a lot of these women are doing. Let's ignore that. Let's focus on so-called toxic masculinity. And yes, there is toxic masculinity, but that's called sin. That's called sin nature. And when men abuse their gifts, when they abuse their biology, to be stronger, when they abuse that, then of course that needs to be dealt with. But to present this commercial as though any signs of aggression, any signs, even the little boys wrestling, any signs of a child, a boy child, a male child expressing himself in a more aggressive way than a girl, then that's all of a sudden considered toxic masculinity. Let's read between the lines here, people. I think it's very, very important that we do that, because we cannot continue to allow the wool to be pulled over our eyes and accept the okie doke. We've got to put on eyes of discernment. We have to, especially as women, we have to begin to build up the masculinity in our sons. Let me tell y'all, this is something I've had to correct in myself. I've had to look at the ways that I was treating my sons, and I still wrestle sometimes because when they get on my nerves, sometimes I want to yell at them, but as they're getting older, I'm having to learn how to communicate with them in a more respectful tone. And it is hard because when you're trained in feminism, like most of us women are, when you're trained in feminism, then there's a default mechanism for us to emasculate our sons, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And so we have to begin to get retaught of how we're to interact with our sons who are growing into men, and how we deal with our husbands and teach and treating them with respect. We have to begin to embrace the ideals and the creation and the design of our Father, because he knew what he was doing when he made his creation. And anytime you go against the designer and how he has created his product, I don't care whether it's a car, whether it's a bicycle, a boat, a house, anytime you go against the design that was supposed to be from the start, you're going to find yourself in trouble. You're going to find things not working properly. You're going to find yourself in frustration and confusion. Things break down before their time because they were not properly handled. So this is what's happened to many of our homes. Our homes have broken down in many ways. Why? Because our men are embracing animalistic ways. They're embracing femininity. They don't want to speak anymore because they are being treated as though all of their masculinity is toxic, and their feminine or softer traits, that's real masculinity. No, it's not. It's a balance. It is a balance. So I just want to say that I do not support the Gillette commercial. I believe that it is propaganda, and I believe that we're going to have to start rewriting our own stories and doing it exactly the way God initially commanded us to do it. I want to thank you once again for tuning in to Ashonda at Large. Definitely, I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Let me know, are you feeling the Gillette ad? Do you think I'm reading too much in it? Or are you sensing that this ad really is more propaganda for the destruction of our people, our community, our homes, and you want to say, no, I'm not going to stand with that nonsense. So in any case, let me know. Definitely like, share, and comment. And just know that I appreciate you listening. I definitely appreciate you listening. Our goal is to change the world one womb and one family at a time. And that begins with you and me. So once again, thank you. I look forward to speaking with y'all again another time. Take care.